is we are seeing whether this live stream actually happens. And whoa, I think it actually worked. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure, but I think we may be live on YouTube because I am seeing on YouTube right now an image of me, an image of GDF, an image of the estimable Charlie Sykes, and an image of a black box representing the mute, invisible Alicia Wanless. And I just want to say that is beautiful because for those who are longtime viewers of In Lieu of Fun, longtime participants in Lieu of Fun, you will notice that I just launched the next successor show to In Lieu of Fun without stressing about the blue go live button. It just happened automatically. Life is good. All right, so I want to start before we I just want to start with where we are in life. I got to yesterday and I sat down to write Dog Shirt Daily, and I was dissatisfied with the state of the year. I had planned the year, and I had planned it carefully. I knew what was going to happen this year. We were going to have an easy election cycle that wasn't that interesting. And we were going to have 4 trials of Donald Trump. And I got to yesterday and felt frustrated by the non-compliance of the world with my plans. Nobody had consulted me before Judge Eileen Cannon decided to throw out the most obviously merited case against Donald Trump. Nobody had consulted me before the Supreme Court decided that the hello, Alicia Wanless. Nobody had consulted me before the Supreme Court had decided that the great threat to the republic was the possibility of the prosecution of former presidents rather than the lawlessness of future presidents. I did like 100 shows with Charlie Sykes on the Bulwark podcast where we talked about things. We never had a serious conversation about this because the possibility was so dumb and remote that it wasn't really worth having a conversation about. No one consulted me on that. Nobody consulted me before Fani Willis decided to pay her boyfriend back in cash and then testify about it in a fashion that a very reasonable young judge, barely out of diapers, but a super smart guy, describes as characterized by an odor of mendacity. Nobody decided to consult. And most important, nobody talked to me about my needs when scheduling the year. And so we have gotten 8 months through the year of our Lord 2024. We've had only 1 Trump trial, and we have an election cycle that is actually bubbling with tension and energy. And I just decided this whole thing that I was going to sit around waiting for Trump trials sucked. It hasn't been working for me, and it was time to have a different plan. And so I wrote that down yesterday and sent it out and felt better as soon as I'd done it. I went to sleep and I woke up knowing what my new project was. It was going to be the revival of In Lieu of Fun. And I'll tell you why, because once again, but not for disease-related reasons, but once again, we are not allowed to have fun anymore. And it's because of the state of our politics and the state of the information ecosystem and the state of propaganda. And I said, who do I want to hang out with? And I said it's the folks from In Lieu of Fun. And I woke up this morning and I texted Kate Klonick and said, it's happening. And Kate Klonick responded, I'm really busy and I'm in France and I have a baby and I can't keep up with all the commitments I've made. I said, you drop in when you need to. Texted the rest of the In Lieu of Fun crew. Scott Shapiro says he's undecided. That was a joke. He's he's kind of busy, but he'll show up when he shows up. GDF and Alicia said we're there. And then I thought, who do I want to be the first guest on In Lieu of Fun? And I thought the estimable Charlie Sykes, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because number one, as this evolves into dog shirt television, which is the new identity of In Lieu of Fun, I thought it had to be someone who was pro dog shirt. Charlie has been consistently pro dog shirt through all of the controversies about it. It has to be somebody who is pro special military operations against Russian diplomatic targets. Charlie's been rock solid on that. Pro democracy, never wavered. And by the way, it has to be somebody who the Dog Shirt Daily audience is into. And Charlie is the subject of the single most trafficked Dog Shirt Daily post ever, which was my hat tip post. I would say a eulogy, except for the small matter that Charlie is very much alive. But the sort of thing you write as a eulogy when Charlie stepped down from running the Bulwark podcast.
So I can reread it regularly.
Yeah, that's why, because Charlie's been clicking reload,
right,
for like 4 months. That's all me. It's all Charlie, yeah. And so here we are. That was about 4 hours ago. I put this all together, decided it was happening. And there was one more thing to discuss, which was what platform were we using? And I am certain I made the right choice because the blue go live button did not fucking flummox me. So we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to have GDF, Alicia Wanless, Charlie Sykes on the screen together. And the first question we're going to ask is, can we actually hear Alicia Wanless, or is she merely a silent, ghostly presence? Alicia, does your audio work?
It might, but it's probably pretty laggy.
It's pretty good, actually.
That was good.
Yeah. So we've got.
If I say like three words at a time.
Well, so let's do this. I will put up a finger, and when you see a finger, you speak, and we'll see how much lag there is. Ready? Set.
Am I supposed to come up with something intelligent to say? I'd like to say that I'm having lots of fun with your politics. This weekend, my treat to myself after finishing that other draft was this puzzle.
Well, I just want to say, for those who don't know, Alicia is Canadian. That sort of pretend political identity to our north. And so when she says your politics, she means this patronizing. It's cute how angry you guys get, and when you pronounce an oo, it doesn't come out like an o, and and we respect that, I guess.
The Canadian Schadenfreude is real.
Well, we pretend to acknowledge the autonomy of Alicia's political identity. All right, Charlie, welcome back. I think on behalf of everybody associated with the Dog Shirt Daily world, I want to start with the question: how are you doing? What have you been up to?
Well, it's summertime in Wisconsin. The living is easy. What can I say? I have dogs and I can sleep in. So, bliss it is to be alive these days. Plus, I don't actually have to come up with an immediate opinion about everything that happens. Which
isn't that that was the biggest relief when I left the Washington Post?
Yes, I think you and I had this conversation about that. Is that you're in the before times, you're watching something and you're constantly processing, okay, what's my take? What am I going to say? What am I going to say? And like last night, I was able to watch the convention and go, not going to write anything, not going to say anything. Didn't know I was going to be doing this. So I was able to just actually experience life like a reasonably normal person.
Did you
And by the way,
find
can I
that it
say
was very
something about
differentiated?
yeah. Yes, there's a big differentiation. But as speaking about non-compliant reality, I really feel you on this, Ben, because as a never Trump conservative, I've gotten used to non-compliant reality a long time ago. So I can give you, it's been like the last, decade that we've kind of like, hey, we are not going to get what we like. Reality is not going to comply with anything that we want. So this is an old feeling for me.
Okay, but I think it's different when it's my schedule. So, like, I sort of understood, like, I think things should go X direction, they're going Y direction.
Right.
But I had a schedule for the year. There were going to be 2 trials that were going to be completed. The election wasn't going to be that interesting. These are the things I'm going to be thinking
You
about.
canceled vacations.
I canceled numerous vacations because
Cold.
there were trial dates scheduled. And I can't go to X country in May because we have a trial in DC, and I can't go to somewhere in June because it'll still be going on. And there were I scheduled my whole year, and I feel like I was owed by all the judges and Supreme Court justices in question, just a little bit more consideration for my needs than they got.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, the apology's undoubtedly in the mail.
it's
John
very
Roberts and I are going to have words.
Yeah.
it's very clear that you're not in the sphere of toddlers recently, because chaos is the only constant. But I do have a question for Charlie. Do you have a dog shirt? And if so, what kind of dog is on it?
I don't believe I have an actual dog shirt, but I have actual dogs. And I feel that compensates for the lack of a dog shirt. I have about 300 pounds of dogs who are within a very close proximity to me right now. And I feel that gives me sort of an honorary entree into dog shirt television.
All right. So what kind of shirt are you wearing? I am, by the way, wearing a major league dog shirt right now.
Yeah. This is my Lake Michigan shark free, just to advertise that among the many benefits of the Great Lakes, the freshwater Great Lakes, we have no sharks.
Although there is, for those who do not know, there is one, I think, freshwater shark in the world.
One that can go in freshwater or stays there?
It lives there all the time. In the Lake Nicaragua shark is a freshwater shark, and I think we should introduce it to Lake Michigan.
No, I think we'll pass on that.
So
we had a big story actually a few years ago about these, I think, what were they called? A killer carp or something, that were headed down the St. Lawrence Seaway, and it was like this constant thing, are we going to have these giant killer carps coming down? I think we had decided we were going to blame Canada for them if they actually showed up. So there might have been. Well, yeah. Alicia seems indignant about that. Where else would they have come from?
I like how Alicia's doing this mostly as a mime.
River.
Right, but the bad things come from you guys.
Right.
All the good things come from us. Everybody knows that.
Well, we will leave the resolution of the War of 1812 for a later episode. All right, so Charlie, one thing that the two parties have in common, and there aren't that many anymore, is that both had political conventions on the shores of your lake, and within a relatively short distance of your home base. So give us a sense. What did you make of yesterday's opening of the Democratic convention? Were you as down on it as Tim Miller seemed today on the Bulwark podcast?
No, because first of all, I mean, conventions are never judged by their first day. I mean, it was long-winded. There were moments of pomposity, but there were some highlights. There were no questions about it. They accomplished what they did, which was they had to sort of move on for the baton. Now, it would have been better if it had been earlier in the night and I hadn't fallen asleep before Joe Biden was done yelling at me. But I have to tell you though, I was actually, because out of old habit, sort of writing down, what were the highlights of this, and most of them are the usual, speeches. But the overwhelming highlight so far for me, and by highlight I mean just most interesting development, and I should probably mention I was at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago, so I'm one of those who is constantly going, is this going to be 1968 all over again? I mean, are we going to get that whole 1968, Grant Park police riot, complete disruption? I was talking to somebody in the judiciary recently who was saying that they had all been told that they were to expect 40,000 protesters to descend on the city. I mean, who knows what could have happened? So far, I think one of the most extraordinary stories has been the failure of those protests to disrupt the convention. They feel like, I mean, they're not a complete non-event. I mean, there are, sporadic outbursts, but nothing in comparison, first of all, to 1968, but also nothing compared to what had been billed. I mean, I was looking at a picture a few minutes ago of a designated area for the protests, and it was completely empty. There were a few protesters who broke down a fence. They've delayed some of the buses getting in. Somebody tried to raise a banner. But these things are absolutely de minimis compared to what could have happened. So one of my big, things to watch for the convention was this convention going to devolve into that kind of chaos that could have derailed the momentum that the Democrats have been experiencing over the last month? And we're talking about this on Tuesday. It may be premature, but so far that has not happened.
All right, so I'm going to blow people's minds now, because the networks, they don't have this, but here on Dog Shirt TV, we actually have a commentator who was present at the 68 Democratic Convention. And that was Charlie Sykes. We were like 14 or something, 15?
13.
Yeah. Tell us your memories of the 1968 Democratic Convention. And then we're going to
experience this.
And then we're going to have Alicia tell us her memories of the 1985 New Democratic Party convention in some Ottawa hamlet.
Well, you're gonna notice.
Is it normal? 13-year-olds at a convention?
No. No, it was not.
It was a child labor situation.
Yes, no, I was actually a page to the Wisconsin delegation. My father had been a campaign manager for Eugene McCarthy in Wisconsin, and so I was in 8th grade, and I got to travel around. And as sort of my perk was that I got to wear this really sort of nerdy little vest and run around with messages on the floor of the convention. But I did manage to steal the Wisconsin banner, those tri-cornered banners on the final day. So, as you'll discover this shortly, Ben, that you begin to forget more and more things that have happened in your life now that you're an honorary senior citizen. But I will say that I remember every single detail of being at the Chicago convention, because you kind of realize that like the world was falling apart. We think things are chaotic right now, but when you're 13 years old and you get hit with tear gas going from the hotel to the convention center, you kind of know that you're out of your normal comfort zone. But the level of chaos was unbelievable.
It's also the last convention that really mattered as a, at least in American politics, and by American politics, Alicia, I mean United States politics. Excuse me. It was a convention at which an actual decision was made. We haven't really had one of those since. And also there was violence, and also there was, questions that really mattered in terms of the future direction of the party and the country. And by the way, if y'all haven't seen the fabulous movie Best of Enemies, about, I think it's called Best of Enemies. It's about the crazy decision by one of the networks, I forget which one, to get as commentators and put in the same room in front of the same camera William F. Buckley Jr. And Gore Vidal, who absolutely loathed one another and spent the convention genteelly screaming at each other and the movie is hilarious and very illuminating about the quality of acrid debate and how even unpleasant debate is more unpleasant now than it was then.
That was. So can I just tell you one memory I have?
Please.
Because, and again, it's every once in a while you encounter a moment of history and then you don't realize it until later. I realized this at the moment. I mean, to say that there was violence outside and that has gotten a lot of attention, but inside the convention hall, I mean, these were Democrats who were at each other's throats. You talk about, Democrats in absolute disarray. There was a moment, and I was not on the floor every night. I think being a page, we rotated out. But I was on the floor the night that Senator Abe Ribicoff from Connecticut was speaking, and prominent anti-war Democrat, and he was calling out the police riot that was taking place outside. And I was on the floor when this rotund older guy stands up and starts going, "Fuck you, just going on," and this is the moment when Mayor Daley was on the floor, the mayor of Chicago, screaming these obscene epithets at the just Jewish senator from Connecticut.
Yeah, they were. He called him a fucking Jew, I believe.
Oh, now I've been asked that before, and I cannot absolutely. I don't know because it was so noisy and everything. I can't say that, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened because he was not holding anything back. I mean, this was pure. Spittle flying everywhere. I hate your guts. Hard to believe they're in the same political party.
Well,
none of that last night.
None of that last night. It was kind of a tame show. All right. I have a correction from an earlier statement. This comes from somebody named Slain Jin. In the YouTube comments, who writes, "There's definitely more than one freshwater shark. Taxonomy is hard and agreement is never universal, but there are something like half a dozen species of river sharks in the genus Glyphis. And there are bull sharks that are equally comfortable in fresh and salt water, which sounds like what Ben was referring to. They're called Zambezi sharks in Africa for their tendency to show up in the Zambezi River." So stand corrected. I believe
it's still nothing in Lake Michigan.
Nowhere is safe. Nowhere is safe.
I'm saying I favor the introduction of all such sharks into Lake Michigan just to make Charlie's shirt wrong. Okay, so Alicia, I have a question for you. You were texting me several weeks ago, right before this whole I'm not sure what to describe it as, but maybe a decapitation of the Democratic Party and its replacement with, sprouts a new head or something, that you were really depressed by the quality of American politics because we had gone not merely insane, but geriatrically insane. And I want to know, how are you feeling today about the resilient quality of U.S. politics? Have we shown that we can cut off a head and sprout another one that's younger and more capable and of generating excitement, or is this is your faith not restored?
That was a lot packed into that question, and I'll do my best to have some sort of an intelligible response here. I think, let me back up. Before the change in leadership for the Democrats, to me, it was just more of a depressing outcome. Like, the November election was nothing to look forward to because nobody could possibly win. And Biden just did not seem to be coming off as a candidate who was exciting people. And if it was even just an anybody but Trump kind of vote, it didn't even seem appealing in that way. So that was just a really depressing outlook. And given some other research that I've been working on, the prospects just didn't look very good. And then you had the switch. Now, what happened was, before, I was quite glad that I don't research campaigns anymore. Then the switch happened, and then I was glued to the site that shall not be mentioned because it is a cesspool. But like, overnight, it just became this meme machine that I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And that was the first election for this cycle in 2024 that everybody's been going on about, that I was sad that I can't actually go and do some research on because I just don't have the space. But does that mean that I'm happy about it? I'm not sure. I think that the political rhetoric is taking a nosedive. It feels like a race to the bottom. I think that it's fascinating watching the Democrats suddenly use memes and ridicule in a way that seems to be catching, but overall, I worry about what the future of democracy is when basically campaigning styles have become like Idiocracy, which is not a documentary, but maybe one day we'll look back at it and think it is.
So what do you think, GDF? I am inclined to disagree with Alicia about this, but and to say that I actually think we've had some interesting political rhetoric over the last month. And I'm curious what you think about, like, before I posit my disagreement, I want to hear from you and Charlie about this. Is the last month as concerning as a matter of political rhetoric as Alicia thinks it is?
I think it's kind of tied to the educated aspect of the electorate. So the more educated the electorate is on issues, then I'm not concerned. And the less educated they are, the more I am. Because if it comes down to who can make the better joke or the catchier quip, then yes, I would be concerned. But I do find that most of those are blowing off steam because the hypocrisy is so tangible. I mean, you have one party that has a completely set of standards applied to them, even just from people interviewing them. And it's frustrating when you see the other party having a decapitation come into effect because there was such pressure on them from the press and they were pressing a real issue, which was his age. And I'm not saying that that wasn't something that should have happened. I think it very much should have happened, but I don't know how to say this without swearing, so I'm going to try really hard. The volume of bullshit that comes out of Trump's mouth on a daily basis is painful because there is very few things you can do to refute it. So I kind of just think that as long as it remains blowing off steam in the short term and we can return kind of to more of a dignified political speech later, I'm okay with it.
What do you think, Charlie?
No, I agree with that. I think the damage that was done, that has been done to, the level of political discourse took place a long time ago. And what you're seeing right now is kind of a refreshing recycling of things. That's not what I wanted to say here, but because there's so many things to unpack here. I mean, yes, the asymmetry has been just extraordinary. You have this fire hose of bullshit, and then Tim Walz gets one letter wrong in something he's talking about, and that becomes a huge story. It is absolutely ridiculous. What concerns me, I suppose, the most would be not the level of rhetoric, back and forth, but the the dumbing down of some of the policy decisions. I mean, both political parties are now embracing sort of economic ideas that are completely gibberish. I mean, they've decided we're going to go with populist things that make no sense economically, but they pull well. So there's a lot of pandering going on. There's long-term damage to that kind of economic pandering. Just check out, third world countries. So that is concerning. But I have to say that my overall impression is that the Democrats have been, I think, ran the risk of sleepwalking into a disaster in 2024, and they woke up. And since Genevieve has broken the glass of language here, I was thinking as I was watching the convention last night and wondering, how many people sitting in that convention hall or watching us right now are thinking, boy, I wish Joe Biden was still at the top of the ticket. I wish Joe Biden was still right. I wish it was Joe Biden, not Kamala Harris, who was the ticket. And having said that, there was so much blowback from blue MAGA Democrats who said, shut up. We're not talking about Joe Biden being too old. You shouldn't even bring this up. Where is our fucking apology? That would be the question I have. The people who, because it was really an extraordinary moment to see that the left had put itself into a bubble, an alternative reality that was every bit as much as hermetically sealed as people on the right. This issue of Joe Biden's age and his cognitive decline was completely visible to everybody. And yet an entire political party went into this year saying, we're not going to look, we're not going to talk about it, we're going to pretend it doesn't exist. And now suddenly we've, made this turn. And I try to stay away from the irrational exuberance, but what's happening now is extraordinary. We've gone, Alicia talks about how suddenly a certain website became interesting. This was going to be this depressing, negative slog, a choice that nobody wanted. Everybody disliked both of the candidates. And now suddenly there's a sense that I hesitate to use words like optimism. I used the phrase a little while ago that, maybe it's this sense that Donald Trump is not our destiny. We started this year thinking we're just going to live in this shitty world for the rest of our lives. Maybe he's not our destiny. Maybe, in fact, Trump and Trumpism is going to be a parenthesis, an historical parenthesis. Maybe it's, bounded on one side by a man named Barack Obama, bounded on the other side by a woman named Kamala Harris, which would be just such condign punishment for Donald Trump. Imagine, if he wakes up every day thinking, I'm not the change agent. I'm just kind of this blip. Now, again, that's my irrational exuberance because I think this hangover is going to be there for a long time. But as opposed to sort of sleepwalking into this nightmare, it does feel like there's an alternative future out there. So I actually find all of it tremendously refreshing, with all the caveats that things can still turn to shit very quickly.
Yeah, so I want to say a word in defense of the Democratic political rhetoric, which may sound backhanded, but I actually mean it pretty sincerely. So I think there's an unusual challenge that the Democrats have faced over the last 8 years, or 8 years, about how to respond to the torrent of bullshit. Yeah. And you have basically 3 approaches. None of them is perfect, right? So first was the Hillary Clinton approach, which was to act like a normal candidate. And it really didn't work. And with no disrespect to Hillary, who I think was genuinely faced with a novel problem and didn't have a lot of time to think about it. You would think, I think the proposition that, okay, if, GDF over here is foaming at the mouth and hurling crazy things and, saying nut stuff, if I just seem like a normal person, if I just talk like a normal politician, that will be attractive by comparison. It turns out to be quite wrong, because in fact, the foaming at the mouth, doing the crazy stuff comes off as very authentic. And what it highlights in the person who's talking like a normal politician is how inauthentic normal political speech sounds.
Right.
And so Donald Trump sounds like Archie Bunker, but he sounds authentically like Archie Bunker. And then next to him, you have a plastic politician talking like this, and people don't look at that and say, oh my God, that's fucking Archie Bunker over there. They look and say, oh my God, how plastic the politician is. And they actually like the crazy person. So Biden takes a different approach to this, which is talk about the crazy person. And this works, right? I got into this race because I saw what happened at Charlottesville and I saw what he did, and it's so upsetting, right? And he talks about your emotional reaction to experiencing Donald Trump. It works, but it works once, because it turns out you actually can't do that forever, because people don't maintain the same emotional response over time. So you end up sounding like a one-note Charlie. How long do you get to talk about your emotional experience of Charlottesville? That may be a good reason to vote for you now, but 4 years later, not so obvious. So Harris and the Democratic Party more generally has mostly taken a third approach, which is kind of not to talk about him at all. And just to, to when he says something crazy, kind of says, well, that's kind of weird. And then kind of move on. And I think JD Vance has helped this a lot, because the weird stuff is like, he keeps throwing thematically consistent material at this, and it kind of works well. But I think their response has been to be a kind of joyous and excited, and the whole brat thing, which I don't know what to make of, but it's actually kind of cool, right? And to like revel in the excitement.
Biden was not cool.
Biden was not cool. Biden was not exciting. But to actually have a campaign that is like, okay, they're weird over there, and we're excited. And yeah, there's some bullshit populist economics in there. That's been true for a while. I mean, no candidate wants to talk about fiscal spending for the last, 10 years more. But I think they've actually discovered something really attractive. And I credit Kamala Harris with this, which is that people want to be a little bit joyous. They want to be a little bit positive. And that doesn't mean, saying, I disapprove of him saying blah. It means like, hey, we deserve better than that. Now, can we go back to doing silly dances? And I think when the world is going crazy, silly dances and coconut trees and brat and is not the craziest response to it.
I have a question though. Should we be a little worried about that? Now, I'm all for it, and I am very happy that we are finally happy. And I'm all for the MVP, as I refer to her, Madam Vice President. But I worry a little bit that this is perhaps insightful of American society writ large now, because we're talking about a different kind of fatigue. Like, we don't have the stamina to deal with anger because that was what was entertaining for the moment, and now we're bored by it. Is that something we should be worried about? Because how often can you, I mean, I guess it's the job of campaigns to repackage themselves, but I worry about what this looks like in the future a bit, because I mean,
so Alicia, you were shaking your head while I was talking, so
oh, I just wanted to be clear. I actually, the lightheartedness, her ability to lean into being a human and that really not sticking as attacks, I have no problem with any of that. I don't think that I think that for a long time, this idea of a staid politician who is somehow perfect and is going to operate like a robot essentially is not achievable. It's not, and it's not likable. Like, it's not going to win votes. And that was a big problem. That was one of the last campaigns I had looked at, was 2016. And Clinton's use of language and everything was just so corporate and staid.
So
it
bad.
couldn't possibly go up against something like Trump. Whereas I think, like, Kamala being a normal human being and showing vulnerability, especially as a woman, and not trying to be anything than what she is, I think is actually really appealing and is what makes this exciting. It's not so much that worries me more. It's just that there is this level of like base humor that everything is kind of being reduced to. Now, don't get me wrong, as a foreigner with, I mean, some stake in your game, I am greatly amused by it. I just worry about where that leads us. And I'm going to bring it back again to idiocracy, because in the back of my head, we're not far off of things being reduced to that level of entertainment.
Okay, so I am really along your lines on all of this. I'm not alarmed by it, but I went back recently and read Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death, which is in 1985, and really is prescient. However, he had no idea how bad it would get. And the way in which all of our discourse is changing, the way we process information is changing. I mean, that is going to be something that we're going to have to navigate, because I do kind of wonder whether or not, the line, well, okay, that's a stupid thing to say. I was saying I wonder whether the lines between entertainment and politics have blurred. Of course they have. They blurred a very long time ago. The question is how dumb it gets. Now, I have to say that I'm a Kamala Harris skeptic. I'm one of these guys that used to share the memes of her from Veep, Julia Dreyfus, and going back and forth and finding them incredibly amusing and everything. So I was among those who probably would have said a year ago, yeah, Joe Biden is very problematic, but you can't step aside because she will be so bad. And yet she has proven to be a much more effective candidate. Now, she hasn't given that press conference. She hasn't given the interview. She hasn't gone off script. But I think that one of the real tells about how effective she's been is that Donald Trump can't come up with a nickname for her. Now, think about that. This is his thing. And he cannot come. Remember, at the beginning, it was cackling Kamala or laughing Kamala. And then people said, okay, really, that's not really that bad, that she's laughing and happy. Okay, dancing Kamala, that doesn't work. For like 5 days, he was calling her Kamabla, which I have no idea what that was about. So he is struggling. And I think that there is that moment you catch a wave in American politics that I remember what 2008 was like, being somebody that supported John McCain. And there's a certain point at which the wave becomes, part of the culture and the optimism, and people are just tired of it. And Genevieve, you had this line of, we're bored with being, bored with anger. I actually find that very reassuring, because at some point, that's how the fever in American was going to break, is that we would become bored with being so angry. We just can't sustain it. And this is, I think, part of the problem. And I think that at some lizard level, Donald Trump understands this. You can keep playing the outrage and the carnage card. And now suddenly he is no longer the instrument of change. He's the old guy. And the more joyful, and I'm already getting tired of that, by the way, the more joyful, the Democrats are, the uglier that Republicans are going to be. And then you're seeing the cycle is that as Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to respond to her, he's playing on some of the ugliest memes out there, which then feeds into can we take 4 more years of this bullshit? And I think that's kind of the moment, that's the mood that you're feeling here. As long as the Democrats don't scare the bejesus out of people, don't do things. That's why I was so worried about the disruption of the convention, that this thing could get out of hand. That's not happening. And we'll see how they play out. But I think they've run a very smart campaign so far. But again, it's easy to dismiss this as vibes and everything. But I think Americans did not realize how desperately we needed this. You know, sometimes you just didn't really realize how much you needed that vacation, how much you needed to go see that comedy show. You just needed to stop gritting your teeth all the time. And I think they've tapped into that. And that's the mood I sense, at least for the moment. And I will say the one thing, okay, so this is how weird I am. I actually got a little bit of a dopamine hit when I heard something last night. And it's the most random thing. And somebody said, we have 78 days. And I thought, ooh, I can do anything for 78 days. You know, I can get through this. That's the other thing, is the speed of this.
I had exactly the same reaction.
Really?
I didn't listen to the convention last night, but when somebody said the phrase 78 days, and I said, boy, I can handle that. And it may have been 79 when I heard it, but I had exactly the same reaction. Alicia, you were trying to get in.
No, I mean, I agree with this. But the thing that sticks out for me is that it does feel like there has been political elite, not just in the US, but across some other democracies that have seemed to have been so out of touch with where public sentiment might be. And I feel like on one hand, the Republicans have been good at tapping into maybe some of the uglier ones. And also I think they've got a coordinated machinery that far surpasses what the Democrats have, which actually makes me more worried about what happens after Trump. Trump is like, I think, a bit of an anomaly, but some of the political leanings and ideas that are quite dangerous are not his. They're somewhere else. And if somebody comes along who is far more astute and able to change the existing order, it could be far worse. But let's park that. Maybe you're going to get a 4-year hiatus from that. But if the Democrats and other leadership in the country don't start to realize that there needs to be changes that fit political moods, I don't know. We might be back here.
Could I hard agree with that? I mean, I've been engaging in a little bit of optimism here about, Trumpism going away. It won't go away. It's not going to go away for a very, very long time. There's too much of an infrastructure out there that is going to try to feed it. I think with JD Vance, though, you're seeing the difficulty of transferring, MAGA ideology to a different personality, because he is not the future. Also, I will say that the period after the election, between November and January, may be among the ugliest periods in American politics, because Donald Trump is desperate. He's in a corner. He knows he might go to jail if he doesn't become president. And so he's capable of absolutely anything.
All right, but GDF, give me just a second, because I have an important Great Lakes shark update from the YouTube chat. Slime Jin writes, as far as I know, there aren't any sharks endemic to the Great Lakes, but there are several species of lampreys, which may not be particularly dangerous, but they sure are a lot creepier than sharks. And so, Charlie, I'm going to find you a Great Lakes, a Lake Michigan lamprey shirt, and I'm going to send it to you if such a shirt exists. GDF, sorry, I broke in.
No, that is very important to know. The lampreys remind me, actually, they kept me on point, because JD Vance, unlike a lamprey, is very scary. But is he so very? Now, one would say weird. Now, the question I had for you, though, is that just an error in their choice? Because while Trumpism doesn't transfer to JD Vance because he's not a very good politician, like he's not charismatic in the same way Trump is. The Tucker problem, though, if you had Tucker Carlson in that role, that's a different element. And so I hesitate to say that it's not transferable. It's not being transferred to the right person. So should we be concerned about the timing of that, or just because how long of a shelf life does this movement have? I mean, does it die with Trump's political career, or is this something that foundations like the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 are going to try to just shift onto the next charismatic creep?
Excellent question. Nobody knows the answer to that. There is Tucker. I'm trying to think of anybody who would be able to have the cult of personality or the kind of sway that Donald Trump does. And I just don't know. And you strip that away, and you have that kind of Wizard of Oz phenomenon, that you strip that away, and and the rhetoric and the ideas are going to be there. There's going to be an appeal. I mean, but I just don't know. I mean, let's go back to the Ron DeSantis campaign. I mean, Ron DeSantis, the entire theory of the case was, I'm going to give you Trumpism without Trump. And basically the voters said, no, we don't want Trumpism. We want Trump. We want the show. And if you don't give us the show, we don't really care about the substance. And there's Ron DeSantis, beavering away, trying to, pass this punitive piece of legislation. And basically people said, we don't really care about that because we want the guy, we want to vote for the felon. And I don't know whether that's transferable. Now, this tape may surface, in the, somewhere in the middle of the second term of President Don Jr.
Ugh.
But in Trump's mind, I think that he would think of, only a dynasty can extend it. And by the way, I used to joke during the Veep stakes and everything, that if you woke Donald Trump up at 3 a.m. and said, who do you want to be your vice president? He would have come up with a family member, because the vice president thing is always very problematic. It's the one person you cannot fire, somebody who becomes an independent source of power if you're elected. He's haunted by the disloyalty of Mike Pence, who was the most loyal vice president ever up until the end. So I don't know the answer to your question, but the ideology is going to be around, because I think it was Alicia's point, the infrastructure for putting out right-wing messaging is so elaborate. I mean, I've watched it over the years develop, and it is so sophisticated and is growing more sophisticated all the time. And of course, that's not going away. And Kamala Harris isn't going to make it go away.
And they've tied it to making change. So in addition to being able to communicate like that, they also are very systematic in how they go about changing laws and changing who might be sitting in certain offices. And it is very much a long game that doesn't seem to be quite the same approach that Democrats have.
All right. I was going to take some audience questions, but I realized I don't know how. And that makes it kind of tricky. I've never run. I know you can take audience questions on Riverside, but I don't know how to do it. And so if audience members of the Greek chorus can do me the favor of reserving the chat for questions for the next 9 minutes, then if anybody chats us a question, I can read it, and I will figure out how to actually do this properly. Charlie, you texted me this morning that I had joined the ranks of senior citizen, which was a reference to something on Dog Shirt Daily yesterday about how I was offered the senior citizen discount at a seafood buffet yesterday. By the way, for those of you who have not been to the newly opened, I believe it is, I forget the name of it. It is a week old on Rockville Pike. It is a Chinese kind of Pan-Asian seafood buffet. It is all you can eat. It is quite a scene. And it takes about 2 hours to get a seat, because everybody's bringing their kids there. I don't know how word of mouth spread, but my brother lives nearby, and so we met there for dinner yesterday, and the waiter offered me the senior citizen discount, and I said to her, I'm informed by the Greek chorus that the answer to the question of how to take questions is that these are initiated by the users. So John Hawkinson, who informs me of this, can you try this and hit the request live call-in button, and I will bring you on whether you have a question or not. Let's see what happens. All right, so far nothing's happened. But
okay, so Ben, from now on, when you go to an all-you-can-eat buffet and they say, "Would you like the senior citizen discount?" the appropriate answer is yes, of course I do.
Well, so I'm I'm okay with that. But I was just first like trying to figure out, did she really think I was 65? And I asked her what the requirement was, and she said it's 65. And I said something like, I'm not even really close. And I think
to make your peace with this, Ben, it's coming.
So the first thing is, I'm 54. I'm not that far away, but I'm closer to 45 than I am to 65 for another few months. But the second thing is, I feel really strongly, and I'm going to zoom in on my face at the risk of doing irreparable damage to my reputation here. But I want people to see this.
Where are we going?
So I know where we're going with this. I would like to point out that my left eyebrow here is gray, like almost completely gray. My right eyebrow is completely black. Now, I don't know what to make of this.
It's been this way for a long, long time, right?
What's that?
It's been this way for a long, long time.
Well, this one's been growing. The gray has been spreading. And I feel like when I'm a senior citizen, it should be when both eyebrows are gray. And I just think that that's the rule. John Hawkinson, you've figured it out. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. There's a little bit of a delay because you have to fill out this box with a question and your name and this, that, and the other thing. So sorry for the delay.
No worries. You're a great American for pointing this out, as are all the other great Americans who pointed this out. So I'm just pointing out that now I have no idea how to get rid of John, which is not a problem because I don't particularly want to get rid of John. He's a great guy, and I'm happy to have him here. But I do think, as a general matter, it shouldn't be the case that if you ask a question, you're stuck here forever. So I'm going to figure this out. And getting rid of John is not the only objective, but it is. Now I've made him like the center of the screen. And so I think
you may have a great question.
Yeah.
You can just, tell us the protocol, Ben. We all have a leave button. So if you want us to click that, we can do that.
Oh, so it's up to you whether you leave.
I mean, I hope it's up to you also. Maybe you're not the host. Are you?
I am the host. Might be your problem. But maybe there's some, so here's the rules until I figure this out. After you ask your question, you should just click the leave button. So that you don't like stay forever, because it's possible to overstay your welcome. Not John, of course, who's never overstayed his welcome. Look, it is 5:58, and unlike In Lieu of Fun, this show is going to begin on time and end on time, because it's just not sustainable to have a show that kind of gets longer and longer and longer. And so one of the big differences between Dog Shirt TV and In Lieu of Fun is going to be that Dog Shirt TV begins sharply at 5, whether Alicia Wanless is a black rectangle, not present, or fully visible. And another difference is that it's going to end sharply at 6, even if somebody's in the middle of a sentence. And even if John is still on the screen, having shown up to ask a question and then not left, we're just going to ask. We're just going to keep going until it is 6. Charlie,
I'll ask you a question, Ben. Wouldn't it be a better rule to have people not leave the video until after the question is answered? That way you can at least see their face.
So that is a very good point. except that they might freeze the way you have, and then we have no
Then who
idea what
knows?
to do. So, all right, we're going to work this out. You know, these things are important. Just like when you
Ben, quick life hack here. I did 23 years of talk radio, and the first rule you learn is anytime a caller is on there, you have your finger on the button the whole time.
Always.
Okay? Just always.
Right. So we're going to work on this. We're going to figure all this out. Look, Charlie Sykes, you're a great American. It's great to see your face again. Yeah. And GDF, Alicia, thank you for coming today. We're going to be doing this a lot. You guys are welcome anytime. Hey, there's a whole bunch of people who showed up today. I'm thrilled to have you all. Please share this live stream on whatever godforsaken social media site you still use. Look, we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to have Dog Shirt TV. So have a good night, folks. And for now, and we're going to do this again soon.
Good night, Ben.